Thank you very much to the team from the University of Vienna. May I now call upon the team from the École Polytechnique to take their place. They will be questioned by the Free University of Berlin. I now call upon the first speaker from the École Polytechnique, Ms. Zoé Durand.
Honorable Chairman, esteemed jury, fellow teams, équipe, Mannschaft, delightful timekeeper, Assemblée internationale. It's so nice to be here, Salle Colbert, so fancy, so French. But honestly, if it had been up to me, I wouldn't have done all of this. You could all be sitting down on your living room couch. The Austrians could be in Vienna. The Britons could be in Cambridge, remembering what is dead. We, the French, could be talking about continents and countries on our canapé. And the Americans could be in a Starbucks. You see, if we had all stayed at home, we wouldn't have wasted so much time coming here. Even though we'd be spatially separated, we could still be together through video, Skype, internet. Not really. Even though it seems like a waste of time to have come here and listened to some speeches, in life, there's always a trade-off between space and time. Frontiers have changed. The link between humans has evolved. Things go faster. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, 100 years later, the race between space and time continues. Space. The soil, the sea, the stars. Time. Past, present, and progress. Millions died. The butchery of the Great War. What man could do to mankind and what mankind could do to man contracted our destinies and changed our lives. Telegrams, telephones made message delivery almost instantaneous, connecting humans. Globalization brought people together. It certainly has given me the most wonderful teammate by allowing me now here to cross countries and continents to be here tonight. In 1916, a man called Albert Einstein tipped our conception of the world upside down. Time was made of space. Space was made of light.
Madam.
1 second. Yes, please go ahead.
Well, how does that have very much to do with tens of millions of people enslaved on the battlefield?
Globalization, sir, is communication. Communication is keeping your friends close, but hacking communication is keeping your enemies even closer. In a way, physics has taught us nothing new. Space is made of light, and life, ladies and gentlemen, is the combination of space, time, and light. The time of our life, and I owe it all to you. Yes, please.
Was wrong communication not rather the reason for this great war which happened?
That's certainly a good question. And we strive today, by being here, sir, to communicate better between ourselves and not to repeat this mistake. Be proud. Be proud, for we are made of stars. Stars, light, space, time. The stars that lighted the night when the American soldiers arrived to France from the sea. The soil, the sea, and the stars. In 1914, time had already started to curve. The very curve that had been planned by the German army to outflank the French troops by marching around the western side of Paris. By the armistice, the link between human beings had been reshaped through new technologies. Radio broadcast began, followed by the television and the internet. Space has contracted. Time has changed. This is an era where information gets to your house faster than the police. The Treaty of Elysée was so harsh towards Germany, it sowed the seeds of discontent. We had just begun to learn that history can indeed repeat itself, and that war does not determine who is right, only who is left. So, when we look down at our new iPhone, when we connect to people from all around the world, we use time to conquer space. When we travel, when we fight, we use space to conquer time. Let the lessons learned during the Great War prevail. Let transatlantic affairs grow and thrive in peace. Let us remember the armistice. Let us remember the 11th of November. Thank you.
I now call upon the second speaker from the École Polytechnique to defend their motion. 100 years later, the race between space and time continues. Ms. Manali Vivek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Mr. Chairman, a most distinguished jury, my fellow speakers who have traveled through space and time to be here, charming timekeeper, a wonderful audience, good evening, guten Abend, bonsoir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not here today to give you a history lesson of the ghost of our future past. We are not going to talk about a prince being shot, a war being fought, or peace being bought. No. 100 years later, we are here to ask ourselves what has changed and what has not. The past, the present, and future are intricately linked. They make us who we are and who we aspire to be. In 100 years, we have moved from socialist uprising to a social networking revolution. From the era of colonization to the age of globalization. From fighting over bits of the Balkans to bytes of Wikipedia. From bombs which rang in our ears to mind the gap between the train and the platform. 100 years later, space is contracting. 100 years later, time is expanding. And yet, 100 years later, the race between contraction and expansion and space and time continues. What is space? Would you like to answer, sir?
Can you please explain the relevance of the link between unchangeable rules of physics and the united Europe or just the transatlantic relations?
Thank you for your question, sir. And we insist, by space and time, we being women of science, do not think that it can just be limited to science. Space for us is the sea, the soil, and the stars, and what once was will always be. And time is the past, the present, and the progress, and what always has will forever be. Space is not just a final frontier, ladies and gentlemen. Space is an ever-evolving, ever-changing continuum. Space is aggregation under the European Union, no thank you, sir, or segregation under Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, let us look at this discussion very carefully. We are commemorating 100 years of the First World War, which affected not just one country, not just one continent, not just one nation, but an entire world. It was not just about the Balkan Empire, a naval arms race, or the Treaty of Elysée. It was a war for peace for the entire world. And no piece of this space was left untouched. Not even India, a colony in my country to be. 100 years ago, my great-great-grandfather caused countries and continents to fight the war here for the British. 100 years later, his corpse lines the Franco-German border. Yes, sir.
If you can't change the space-time continuum, why are you considering it as something variable for this debate and for your motion?
So let me remind you, in the words of the famous Harry Potter, this is what we have to say about space and time. One cannot live while the other survives. Time! Ladies and gentlemen, look around you and try stop that time from ticking. A la Keisha, tick-tock on the clock. Time is no longer the painful boat ride from the Atlantic. Time is no longer waiting for a telegraph. Time is no longer waiting in a trench to be bombed. Times have changed, ladies and gentlemen. 8 hours is what it takes from Paris to New York. 4 minutes to send an email and a single hashtag to share it with the world. Which is what my colleague Zoe told us. But lines of communication opening up, and internet and opera and whatnot. We are not here to talk about lofty ideas of countries and continents. We are here to remind you of our two basic needs, nay, two basic rights, the space to breathe and the time to live. And as Zoe rightly said, the inherent connection between the two. Let us stand on the shoulders of giants and look into the future. As space and time continue to curve and evolve, let us trek into the future. And I will end by adapting the vision of the great Captain Kirk himself. Space and time, the final frontiers. Our 100-year mission to boldly go where no man has gone before. And let me go further, to boldly go where no all-women's team has gone before. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.